Two men arrive at one of the shops. The old man goes inside and the young stays outside. To the surprise of the saleswoman, the man pays for one piece of gum, but then the guy outside is distracted by passing girls, and the saleswoman discovers several bottles of alcohol are missing. She arms herself with a hammer and blocks the car's path. The woman is preparing to fight with a thief. The man suddenly points a gun at her and asks not to come closer, but she moves on, and then the guy pulls the trigger. The woman screams from being wounded, although there is no gun in the guy's hands. The man brings his son to his senses. Then they get into the car and drive away. The policeman comes to the woman, but finds no injury. Nevertheless, he sets off in pursuit. At this time, the father asks the guy to do something to hide their car. And then, instead of their car, the policeman suddenly sees in front of him a car of a completely different brand. The father reminds them of their rules: never stand out and never joke with the family. But Ian doesn't understand why they are content with little. He can do much more serious things and get big money. But the father is against it. They will be found before they spend this money and will send the guy to the laboratory. At this time, the policeman demands to stop the car, but suddenly huge hail begins to fall on his car. His car skids, spins along the road, and overturns right at a gas station. But the worker behaves completely calmly, and on the surveillance camera, the car looks completely intact and standing on its wheels. At this time, an unknown woman watches video footage of this strange robbery and praises her team. They finally found this guy. Meanwhile, Ian and his father are at home on an old ship. The guy has a dream about a young, beautiful woman playing with a child and singing. Ian wakes up and hears his father congratulating him on his birthday. But Ian doesn't want to listen to the memories, and he announces to his father that he is going to the slot machine parlor. His father gives him a gift, which Ian puts aside. At this time, the policeman tells the waitress about his pursuit, but she only laughs at his fantasies. And an unknown man listens to their talk. Meanwhile, a group of armed men approaches the ship. Adriana enters the control room and thanks Vincent for giving themselves away, otherwise the agency would not have been able to find them. She demands to give Ian back and is informed that the guy is in the gaming salon. Meanwhile, the perceiver is also looking for Ian and beating up the agency employees. In one of the halls, the soldier notices a perceiver and opens fire on him. Ian sees that the perceiver is standing right behind the shooter and changing reality before his eyes. The man also sees the guy, but they sneak up on him from behind, then put a helmet on his head and take him away. The woman appears and asks Ian not to look at the perceiver. The guy is taken away, while the perceiver continues the fight, even with his face covered, and easily scatters the attackers. Meanwhile, Ian is led to Adriana's van. The woman says that if he wants to survive, he must go with her. At this time, the perceiver wins the fight. He takes off the helmet, but Ian is already out of reach. The guy is put on a similar helmet and taken away in an agency van. Vincent is also there. The perceiver sees the car driving away and hurries onto the road. The man causes a huge accident with explosions and fire, but Adriana orders the driver to ignore the tragedy and drive on. The man presses on the gas and passes a mirage. Ian is taken to the agency, where Adriana says that power, which is achieved through the ability to create lies that millions believe, is to blame for the deterioration of people's lives. They are at war with the organization consciousness, which includes people with superpowers. It is they who control the power and manipulate the mind of the government. The agency tries to preserve democracy in the world. The person he saw is called the perceiver, the last of the consciousness who can project an image, like Yen himself. He wants to bring Ian into his team. Adriana says she's on the good side and wants the formula in Ian's blood to create people like him. The woman wants to make sure of his abilities and asks him to create a mirage with a beach, a cocktail, and a chihuahua. He must take some strong emotion as a basis. The guy is shown a photo of the same woman he has been dreaming about for many years, and suddenly they find themselves on the beach. Only instead of a chihuahua, there was a fly. Ian passes out and demands to see his father. Then he is escorted to the room where Vincent comes too. Adriana advises Ian to enter the man's memory and find out the truth. The guy enters his head and sees how many years ago he stole a child from the laboratory. Later, Adriana reviews Ian's test results and realizes that he is much stronger than she thought, but there is no trace of the formula in his blood. Apparently, he is the only naturally born perceiver. The project manager advises to get rid of the dangerous mutant. Meanwhile, the professor arrives at the center. Esther comes to Ian's room and urges him to run away so as not to become a lab rat. She takes the guy out, but security notices them at the elevator. The girl gets into a fight and quickly gets rid of the guards. Ian demands that Vincent be taken with him, since his past is hidden in his memories. Adriana is informed about the disappearance of the experimental subjects, and she declares the alarm. At this time, the professor walks around the center unhindered until the fugitives manage to get to the car and drive away. On the way, Ian asks Vincent not to call him son. Then Vincent realizes that the guy has gotten into his head. Meanwhile, the professor suddenly grabs a gun and destroys a group of militants. It becomes clear that this is the Perceiver. Ian distracts the guards at the exit from the territory. Men shoot anywhere, but not at the car. However, one of the bullets hits the wheel. Ian can't control the car, and it goes off the road. The Perceiver catches up with them and realizes that Ian is hiding at the scene of the accident. Later, Ian and Esther take Vincent to a roadside hostel where they spend the night. Esther admits that she works for consciousness. In the morning, they relax on the roof of the hostel and talk about life. The guy is dejected that Vincent is not his father, but the girl advises him to believe in himself. They return to the room to find Vincent already drunk. Esther advises him to leave him. Ian decides to enter the sleeping man's head. He sees the laboratory again. Ian reads the address on the documents and hears the name Kaminsky. Later, the guy comes to the bank and asks the operator to cash the check. The woman gives him 5,000 euros, but as soon as the guy walks out the door, she finds in her hands a piece of paper with the word sorry. Security tries to catch up with the couple, but they hide in the room. Esther is overjoyed at their success, but Ian isn't sure they did the right thing. Then the girl goes to the shower. Ian hears the sound of a motor and creates a mirage. The Perceiver enters the room. He knows that the projection is powerless in front of mirrors, so he immediately finds the guy. Ian jumps into the fray. The man has difficulty calming him down. He enters the guy's head and finds out everything that happened to him in the last hours. The Perceiver then leaves. After some time, Vincent returns and brings Ian to his senses. The guy announces that they are going to Warsaw and refuses to run away and hide. Meanwhile, the agency is monitoring the purchase of tickets to Warsaw. The couple finds an abandoned laboratory building. Ian and Esther get inside. The guy recognizes the room from his dreams, explores the wall, and finds a secret storage room where there are documents about the experiments carried out here. They find the diary of his mother, whose name is Ursula Kaminsky. Suddenly, a Perceiver appears in the room and asks for a chance to talk. Ian tries to trick him and creates projections, but the man easily solves them and eventually takes the guy at gunpoint. He could have killed him a long time ago, but he doesn't need to because Ian is his son. Ursula, he and several others were created in the 1950s. During the Cold War, they were given a special drug based on Kaminsky's formula, which caused them to develop psychic abilities. But when the war ended, the authorities began to catch and destroy dangerous mutants. One by one, they had no hope until the Mule appeared, the last of the Perceivers, with the ability to completely subjugate a person. He created consciousness, and despite the fact that the Perceivers were infertile, he and his wife had a child, which was a real miracle. The conversation is interrupted by agents who appear. The Perceiver orders the couple to escape through the roof, while he apprehends the gunman. The man goes towards the military and opens fire from 2 pistols at once. The couple runs to the stairs and fights off the attackers. The Perceiver creates a mirage of dangerous spiders, and the agents begin to fight them off. But then the helmet is put on him again. Esther takes the guy to the roof, after which the couple disappears. Meanwhile, the Perceiver is brought to Adriana. She orders the process of obtaining the formula from his blood to begin. This causes the man agony, but it turns out that the formula is so diluted in his body that it is impossible to synthesize it. At this time, the operator feeds the Perceiver through a device that also holds the gun on his forehead in order to exclude any possibility of escape. But suddenly, the operator's hand itself turns the weapon against the guards and shoots everyone, and then frees the prisoner. At this time, Ian and Esther arrive at the Perceiver's house in Madrid, where Ursula has lived all these years. Ian is shocked by the sight of the woman. The Perceiver advises him to enter her head, because now this is the only way to communicate with her. Ian finds himself in the same white room from his childhood, where a child plays with strange blocks. It turns out that this is how his mother encrypted the formula, and now the Perceiver asks to give it to him in order to create others like himself and destroy the agency. But Ian refuses to do this because it was not for nothing that she hid it. The Perceiver begins to enter Ursula's head. She convulses, but suddenly comes to her senses and recognizes her son. At this time, the house is attacked by agency militants. Enraged, Ian turns on the third ability and orders the fighters to kill each other. Adriana also puts the gun to her temple. She asks to stop this because everything is quite the opposite, but the guy doesn't want to listen to anything. Then Vincent comes out to him and asks not to kill people. The father is the one who educates and makes sacrifices. With these words, Vincent shoots himself. Ian rushes to the dying man while the perceiver takes Esther. Vincent asks to enter his head, and the guy sees Ursula asking to save the child from the perceiver. He asks for forgiveness and remembers how his father taught him to look into the distance and not give up. Ian takes the gun and runs after the perceiver. He finds himself in a hall where a party is going on. The guy puts everyone on the floor and clears the way. But at the behest of the perceiver, people get up and rush into a fight with Ian. The guy finds himself in a difficult situation, but Adriana appears and shoots the perceiver. He is distracted and lets Ian out of sight, but Esther remains in his arms. The man demands to give the formula, and then he will let the girl go. But then Adriana declares that there is no girl here. She is a projection, so Ian can safely shoot. But Esther shouts that this is not true. Ian tries to remember at what moment he might have been given a mirage. He decides that Esther is a vision. He shoots and kills the perceiver, but the girl does not disappear. Later, he and Adriana meet at the cemetery. She asks for the formula, but Ian wants to remain on the neutral side and gets into the car where Esther is waiting for him. He finally opens his father's gift, which turns out to be a book with a reminder that better things await those who do not lose hope. Adriana also believes in this and promises the leader to achieve her goal.